Hello. Happy Friday. Whoop. So I adjust my chair. Adjust my clothes. How do I look? Collar up, collar down. I think it's got to be down. I see a farmhouse. And I see a ice wizards. And I see a Sharkies. Hello, Sharkies. Happy Friday. Getting lots of rain. It's been pretty rainy here all day. I think our puppy is a little grumpy at us because we've been reluctant to take him out into the world. Down collar. What's new with Sharkies? Anything exciting happened to you this week? Super raining. Two of you are out in the pumpkin patch today. That would be a muddy pumpkin patch, I imagine. Yeah. We let our pup out the back door and he goes out for about 2 seconds before running back in, but he still wants to go get his leash and go out the front door. Guess he either thinks that it's got different weather out there, or that it's worth putting up with the rain if he gets to go on a WALK. Less muddy than I'd think. The rain washed the mud off of you pretty quickly. Fair enough. Whenever the weather starts being like this, I kind of driving through it or whatever, and I just immediately go, I'm glad I'm not working out in this. Some of the days of film work where it's like you get to work and it's like the weather is like this and you're out in that for 18 hours and then you climb back into your car all like soaking wet and drive home, and then you're hanging your rain gear up over a heating vent or something like that to try and get it dried off for the next morning because you're going to be back in it again. Ugh, it's just miserable. I don't miss that. Farmhouse thinks you guys were having fun in the pictures. Yeah, those are pretty cute. I love that weird dog painting thing. I mean, lovely dog painting thing. It was so nice. Autumnal fun. Where's the dog? Where's the puppy? Oh, there he is. Oh, I see you. Wag, wag, wag. Wag, wag, wag. Look at that tail go. Cameo. Oh, and off he goes. Oh, puppy. I'm feeling a little bit tuckered out this evening. But Farmhouse and I are very likely going to be driving out to Chilliwack after this stream is done. So maybe I'll have to grab a coffee before we head out or something like that. Well, I'm not seeing too many people showing up yet. Erica is probably not going to be here tonight. Almost definitely not going to be here. Just sad, she's missed a few at this point. I don't know whether or not Robot Kyo is busy this evening or not. So it might be a smaller audience tonight. That was a fun episode that we just got through previously. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's not chapters, so I've just been saying episodes. Not quite as much humor in that last stream we did, but more of the plot thickening, as it were, an actual case. What the? Oh. Did I just get laggy there? It looked like the stream kind of buffered for a second. Hopefully my audio isn't off or anything like that as a result. No? Just on my end, maybe? Alright, well that's fine. Yeah, Vime's actually considering not immediately having a drink is a good sign. Seems like he's got a little motivation at the moment, trying to figure out what's up with this whole dragon business. And off to visit Lady Ramkin. Oh, I didn't practice the voice. I thought about it. I was thinking about the voice afterwards and what I needed to fix on that one. I don't want her voice to be too like goofy, because she is an interesting character. I don't know. Not necessarily, whatever it ends up being, it's going to be me trying to do a feminine voice, so it's not going to be perfect. Well, maybe somewhere in the realm of when the male actors play women on Kids in the Hall. Yeah. Oh, Kids in the Hall. I haven't seen that for years. It's been a very long time. I've been spending a lot of time recently doing the planning for the upcoming D&D game. So lots of reading and looking up details and things, and I've got to make more notes. I've got lots of sticky notes, and I've got to I think those are going to be quite liberally pasted throughout the book. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to go quite so high-pitched as Monty Python tends to. But yeah, lots of D&D. Been playing a little bit of a brand new MMORPG called New World, which has been interesting. It's not the most action-packed game, but it's got a lot of just like little activities to do to or at least it hasn't been the most action-packed of what I've been doing, but there's lots of PvP stuff that I haven't even approached. But lots of skills and things, fishing and wood chopping and mining and all kinds of crafting and whatnot, and then you can buy yourself a house and you can make furniture for the house in a city and things like that. And then the cities are player owned. Like they're pre-existing locations, but then like players form companies and then they can buy a city potentially, or go to war and try and take a city, and then they can set taxes on the cities for the people that own homes there and things like that. It's pretty in-depth, but it's fun in the like, I don't know, it's fun to zone out and go, just chopping down trees in the forest. Yeah, I know the taxes is definitely not the most appealing sounding thing, But it makes it interesting because you can kind of travel from one city to another and be like, okay, I'm going to spend a bunch of time here and do a bunch of crafting here because the taxes are lower on like the crafting. Um, Plus, you know, maybe there's resources nearby that you want. But I haven't bought a house in the game, so mostly I guess the only taxes I worry about are if I'm selling things on the auction house or crafting. Because I think those two things tend to have taxes on them. But I don't know all the details on that. I'm not that in depth. Mostly just like run out into forest, chop down trees, fight some things, smack some boulders with a pick to get some rocks to turn into blocks to whatever, craft with or just sell. Cooking, it's got cooking, so grab herbs and things like that and game meat and poultry and whatever I can find and then go back and cook some random meal type things so that I can level up my cooking skill. It's fun, and it's fun playing with friends with that, but it's not like, I don't know, it's got a good like time sink feeling in it where it's fun enough to just spend time and be like, you know, let's go from one objective to another kind of thing. So that's the video game I've been kind of playing when I have done too much D&D stuff and my brain is starting to melt out my ears and I'm like, okay, I need to stop reading this book for a little bit. I love playing D&D and I love running D&D, but I don't always love planning D&D. The planning part of it is definitely my weakest. Like, I can only do so much of it at once before it starts to feel like homework. Alright, well, it's 7:12. I don't know how many more people are going to trickle in, so why don't we get started? Hey, does that sound good to you? I don't know why I needed to sound accusing there. In case anyone was wondering, we are on page 119, almost 120 of the book. And it looks like it goes on to about 412, I think. As long as there's no, like... Yeah, I think it's about 412 pages. And we're about 120 through that. So, what, a little bit over a quarter of the book, I guess. Alright. So, where we left off, the librarian had come into the watch house and recruited Carrot, even though Carrot was not supposed to leave the watch house because he was left in charge and told not to go arresting anyone. So Carrot wrote a note and out fighting crime, please call again later, thank you. And then went off with the librarian. And here we go, back with the Supreme Grand Master. The Supreme Grand Master raised his arms. "Brethren," he said, "let us begin." It was so easy. All you had to do was channel that great septic reservoir of jealousy and cringing resentment that the brothers had in such abundance. Harness their dreadful, mundane unpleasantness, which had a force greater in its way than roaring evil, and then open your own mind into the place where the dragons went. Vimes found himself grabbed by the arm and pulled inside. The heavy door shut behind him with a definite click. Alright, let me try this again. It's Lord Mountjoy Gayscale Talenthrust III of Ankh, said the apparition. How's that? Which was dressed in huge and fearsomely padded armor. You know, I really don't think he can cut the mustard. He can't, said Vimes, backing away. It really needs two of you. It does, doesn't it? Whispered Vimes, his shoulder blades trying to carve their way out through the fence. Could you oblige? Boomed the thing. Maybe with more confidence. I'm trying, okay? This is not my strong suit. I am fully aware of how ridiculous I sound, okay? Peanut gallery. I don't know why I broke down here. I just... I'm trying not to sound completely ridiculous. But I sound completely ridiculous. What? Oh, don't be squeamish, man. You just have to help him up into the air. It's me who has the tricky part. I know it's cruel, but if he can't manage it tonight, then he's for the choppy chop. Survival of the fittest and all that, don't you know? Captain Vimes managed to get a grip on himself. He was clearly in the presence of some sex-crazed would-be murderess, insofar as any gender could be determined under the strange lumpy garments. If it wasn't female, then the references to "it's me who has the tricky part" gave rise to mental images that would haunt him for some time to come. He knew the rich did things differently, but this was going too far. Madam, he said coldly, I am an officer of the watch, and I must warn you that the course of action you are suggesting breaks the laws of the city, and also of several of the more straight-laced gods, he added silently, and I must advise you that his lordship should be released unharmed immediately. The figure stared at him in The figure stared at him in astonishment. Why, it said, it's my bloody dragon. I just realized that I've got audio coming through my headphones over here. There we go. Sharkies say, last night I went through a similar thing as I attempted a Mrs. Beaver voice. Ended up sounding a little like one of the characters from Teen Girl Squad. So-and-so! Farmo says, cheerleader! So-and-so, what's our face? Mrs. Beaver! Have another drink, not Corporal Nobby, said Sergeant Colin unsteadily. I do not mind if I do, not Sergeant Colin, said Nobby. They were taking inconspicuously inconspicuosity seriously. That ruled out most of the taverns on the Moorpork side of the river, where they were very well known. Now they were in a rather elegant one in downtown Ankh, where they were being as unobtrusive as they knew how. The other drinkers thought they were some kind of cabaret. I feel like I'm kind of alternating between calling it Ank and Onk. And I'm going to just keep doing that, I guess. I was thinking, said Sergeant Colin. What? If we bought a bottle or two, we could go home, and then we'd be really inconspicuous. Nobby gave this some thought. But he said, we've got to keep our ears open, he said. We're supposed to, what he said, detect anything. We can do that at my house, said Sergeant Colin. We could listen all night, really hard. That's a good point, said Nobby. In fact, it sounded better and better the more he thought about it. But first, he announced, I got to pay a visit. Me too, said the sergeant. This detecting business gets to you after a while, doesn't it? They stumbled out into the alley behind the tavern. There was a full moon up, but a few rags of scruffy cloud were drifting across it. The pair, inconspicuously, bumped into one another in the darkness. Is that you, Detector Sergeant Colin? Said Nobby. That's right. Now, can you detect the door to the privy, Detector Corporal Nobbs? We're looking for a short, dark door of mean appearance. Ah ha 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 ha. There were a couple of clanks and a muffled swear word from Nobby as he staggered across the alley, followed by a yowl when one of Ankh-Morpork's enormous population of feral cats fled between his legs. Who loves you, pussycat? Said Nobby under his breath. Needs must, then, said Sergeant Colin, and faced a handy corner. His private musings were interrupted by a grunt from the corporal. You there, Sergeant? Detector, Sergeant, to you, Nobby, said Sergeant Colin pleasantly. Nobby's tone was urgent and suddenly very sober. Don't piss about, Sergeant. I just saw a dragon fly over. I've seen a horse fly, said Sergeant Colin, hiccuping gently. And I've seen a house fly. I've even seen a green fly. But I ain't never seen a dragon fly. Of course you have, you pillock, said Nobby urgently. Look, I'm not messing about. He had wings on him like great big wings. Sergeant Colin turned majestically. The corporal's face had gone so white that it showed up in the darkness. Honest, Sergeant. Sergeant Colin turned his eyes to the damp sky and the rain-washed moon. All right, he said. Show me. There was a slithering noise behind him, and a couple of roof tiles smashed onto the street. He turned, and there, on the roof, was the dragon. There's a dragon on the roof, he warbled. Nobby, it's a dragon on the roof. What shall I do, Nobby? There's a dragon on the roof. It's looking right at me, Nobby. For a start, you could do your trousers up, said Nobby from behind the nearest wall. Farmo says, it's like 2020, even the guards are work from home. Nice. Wings like wings, accurate analogy. It's hard to be more accurate. Even shorn of her layers of protective clothing, Lady Sybil Ramkin was still toweringly big. Vimes knew that the barbarian Hublander folk had legends about great chain-mailed, armor-broad, cart-horse-riding maidens who swooped down on battlefields and carried off dead warriors on their cropper to a glorious roistering afterlife, while singing in a pleasing mezzo-soprano. Is it mezzo-soprano? Mezzo-soprano? Well, either way. Lady Ramkin could have been one of them. She could have led them. She could have carried off a battalion. When she spoke, every word was like a hearty slap on the back, and clanged with the aristocratic self-assurance of the totally well-bred. The vowel sounds alone would have cut teak. You always hear it pronounced mezzo. Alright, mezzo-soprano. Vimes's ragged forebears were used to voices like that, usually from heavily armored people on the back of a war charger, telling them why it would be a jolly good idea, don't you know, to charge the enemy and hit them for 6. His legs wanted to stand to attention. Prehistoric men would have worshipped her, and in fact had amazingly managed to carve lifelike statues of her thousands of years ago. She had a mass of chestnut hair, a wig, Vimes learned later. No one who had much to do with dragons kept their own hair for long. She also had a dragon on her shoulder. It had been introduced as Talenthrust Vincent Wonderkind of Quirm, referred to as Vinny, and seemed to be making a large contribution to the unusual chemical smell that pervaded the house. This smell permeated everything. Even the generous slice of cake she offered him tasted of it. The, shoulder. It looks very nice, he said, desperate to make conversation. Rubbish, said her ladyship. I'm just training him up because shoulder sitters fetch twice the price. Vimes murmured that he had occasionally seen society ladies with small, colorful dragons on their shoulders, and thought it looked very, nice. Oh, it sounds nice, she said. I'll grant you. Then they realize it means soot burns, frizzled hair, and crap all down their back. Those talons dig in, too. And then they think the thing's getting too big and smelly, and next thing you know, it's either down to the Moorpork Sunshine Sanctuary for lost dragons, or the old heave-ho into the river with a rope round your neck. Poor little buggers. She sat down, arranging a skirt that could have made sails for a small fleet. Now then, Captain Vimes, was it? You think that sounds better? Vimes was at a loss. Ramkins, long dead, stared down at him from ornate frames high on the shadowy walls. Between, around, and under the portraits were the weapons they'd presumably used, and had used well and often by the look of them. Suits of armor stood in dented racks along the walls. Quite a number, he couldn't help noticing, had large holes in them. The ceiling was a faded riot of moth-eaten banners. You did not need forensic examination to understand that Lady Ramkin's ancestors had never shirked a fight. It was amazing that she was capable of doing something so unwarlike as having a cup of tea. My forebears, she said, following his hypnotized gaze. You know, not one Ramkin in the last 1,000 years has died in his bed. Yes, ma'am. Source of family pride, that. Yes, ma'am. Quite a few of them have died in other people's, of course. Vime's teacup rattled in its saucer. Yes, ma'am, he said. Captain is such a dashing title, I've always thought. She gave him a bright, brittle smile. I mean, colonels and so on are always so stuffy. Majors are pompous, but one always feels somehow that there is something delightfully dangerous about a captain. What was it you had to show me? Vimes gripped his parcel like a chastity belt. I wondered, he faltered, how big swamp, he stopped. Something dreadful was happening to his lower regions. Lady Ramkin followed his gaze. Oh, take no notice of him, she said cheerfully. Hit him with a cushion if he's a bother. A small elderly dragon had crawled out from under his chair and placed its jowly muzzle in Vimes's lap. It stared up at him soulfully with big brown eyes and gently dribbled something quite corrosive, by the feel of it, over his knees. And it stank like the ring around an acid bath. That's Dewdrop Maybelline Talenthrust the First, said her ladyship. Champion, and sire of champions. No fire left now, poor soppy old thing. He likes his belly rubbed. Vimes made surreptitiously vicious jerking motions to dislodge the old dragon. It blinked mournfully at him with rheumy eyes and rolled back the corner of its mouth, exposing a picket fence of soot-blackened teeth. Just push him off if he's a nuisance, said Lady Ramkin cheerfully. Now then, what was it you were asking? I was wondering how big swamp dragons grow, said Vimes, trying to shift position. There was a faint growling noise. You came all the way up here to ask me that? Well, I seem to recall Gayheart Talenthrust of Ankh stood 14 thumbs high, toe to matlock, mused Lady Ramkin. About 3 foot 6 inches, she added kindly. No bigger than that, said Vimes hopefully. In his lap, the old dragon began to snore gently. Golly, no! He was a bit of a freak, actually. Mostly they don't get bigger than 8 thumbs. Captain Vimes's lips moved in hurried calculation. 2 feet, he ventured. Well done! That's the cobs, of course. The hens are a bit smaller. Captain Vimes wasn't going to give in. A cob would be a male dragon, he said. Only after the age of 2 years, said Lady Ramkin triumphantly. Up to the age of 8 months, he's a pumit. Then he's a cock until 14 months, and then he's a snood. Captain Vimes sat entranced, eating the horrible cake, breeches gradually dissolving as the stream of information flooded over him. How the males fought with flame, but in the laying season only. How the males fought with flame, but in the laying season only the hens breathed fire. Footnote 1. Only until their third clutch, of course. After that, they're dams. End of footnote. From the combustion of complex intestinal gases to incubate the eggs, which needed such a fierce temperature, while the males gathered firewood, a group of swamp dragons was a slump or an embarrassment. A female was capable of laying up to 3 clutches of 4 eggs every year, most of which were trodden on by absent-minded males, and that dragons of both sexes were vaguely uninterested in one another, and indeed everything except firewood, except for about once every 2 months, when they became as single-minded as a buzzsaw. I keep thinking I hear ramekin, ramekin. No relation, I expect. Am I mispronouncing something? He was helpless to prevent himself being taken out to the kennels at the back, outfitted from neck to ankle in leather armor faced with steel plates, and ushered into the long, low building where the whistling had come from. The temperature was terrible, but not as bad as the cocktail of smells. He staggered aimlessly from one metal-lined pen to another, while pear-shaped, squeaking little horrors with red eyes were introduced as Moonpenny Duchess Marchpane, who's gravid at the moment, and Moonmist Talenthrust II, who was best of breed at Pseudopolis last year. Jets of pale green flame played across his knees. Many of the stalls had rosettes and certificates pinned over them. And this one, I'm afraid, is good boy Bindle Featherstone of Quirm, said Lady Ramkin relentlessly. Vimes stared groggily over the charred barrier at the small creature curled up in the middle of the floor. It bore about the same resemblance to the rest of them as Nobby did to the average human being. Something in its ancestry had given it a pair of eyebrows that were about the same size as its stubby wings, which could never have supported it in the air. Its head was the wrong shape, like an anteater. It had nostrils like jet intakes. If it ever managed to get airborne, the things would have the drag of twin parachutes. It was also turning on Captain Vimes the most silently intelligent look he'd ever had from any animal, including Corporal Nobbs. It happens, said Lady Ramkin sadly. It's all down to genes, you know. Is it? Said Vimes. Somehow the creature seemed to be concentrating all the power its siblings wasted in flame and noise into a stare like a thermic lance. He couldn't help remembering how much he'd wanted a puppy when he was a little boy. Mind you, they'd been starving. Anything with meat on it would have done. He heard the dragon lady say, "One tries to breed for a good flame, depth of scale, correct color, and so on. One just has to put up with the occasional total whittle." The little dragon turned on Vimes a gaze that would be guaranteed to win it the award for dragon the judges would most like to take home and use as a portable gas lighter. Total whittle, Vimes thought. He wasn't sure of the precise meaning of the word, but he could hazard a shrewd guess. It sounded like whatever it was you had left when you had extracted everything of any value whatsoever. Like the watch, he thought. Total whittles, every one of them. And just like him, it was the saga of his life. That's nature for you, said her ladyship. Of course, I wouldn't dream of breeding from him, but he wouldn't be able to anyway. Why not? said Vimes. Because dragons have to mate in the air, and he'll never be able to fly with those wings, I'm afraid. I'll be sorry to lose the bloodline naturally. His sire was Brenda Rodley's Treebite Brightscale. Do you know Brenda? No, said Vimes. Lady Ramkin was one of those people who assumed that everyone else knew everyone one knew. Charming, Gel. Anyway, his brothers and sisters are shaping up very well. Poor little bastard, thought Vimes. That's nature for you in a nutshell. Always dealing off the bottom of the pack. No wonder they call her a mother. You said you had something to show me, Lady Ramkin prompted. Vimes wordlessly handed her the parcel. She slipped off her heavy mittens and unwrapped it. Plaster cast of a footprint, she said baldly. Well? Does it remind you of anything? Said Vimes. Could be a wading bird. Oh. Vimes was crestfallen. Lady Ramkin laughed. Or a really big dragon. Got it out of a museum, did you? No. I got it off the street this morning. Ha! Someone's been playing tricks on you, old chap. There was, circumstantial evidence. He told her. She stared at him. Draco Nobilis, she said hoarsely. Pardon? Draco Nobilis, the noble dragon, as opposed to these fellows. She waved a hand in the direction of the massed ranks of whistling lizards. Draco Vulgaris, the lot of them. But the big ones are all gone, you know. This really is a nonsense. No two ways about it. All gone. Beautiful things they were. Weighed tons. Biggest things ever to fly. No one knows how they did it. And then they realized. It was suddenly very quiet. All along the rows of kennels, the dragons were silent, bright-eyed, and watchful. They were staring at the roof. Carrot looked around him. Shelves stretched away in every direction. On those shelves, books. He made a calculated guess. This is the library, isn't it? He said. The librarian maintained his gentle but firm grip on the boy's hand and led him along the maze of aisles. Is there a body? Said Carrot. There'd have to be. Worse than murder. A body in a library. It could lead to anything. The ape eventually padded to a halt in front of a shelf no different than, it seemed, 100 others. Some of the books were chained up. There was a gap. The librarian pointed to it. Ook! Well, what about it? A hole where a book should be? Ook! A book has been taken. A book has been taken? You summoned the watch, Carrot drew himself up proudly, because someone's taken a book? You think that's worse than murder? The librarian gave him the kind of look other people would reserve for people who said things like, "What's so bad about genocide?" This is practically a criminal offense, wasting watch time, said Carrot. Why don't you just tell the head wizards, or whoever they are? Ook! The librarian indicated with some surprisingly economical gestures that most wizards would not find their own bottoms with both hands. Well, I don't see what we can do about it, said Carrot. What's the book called? The librarian scratched his head. This one was going to be tricky. He faced Carrot, put his leather glove hands together, and then folded them open. I know it's a book. What's its name? The librarian sighed and held up a hand. 4 words, said Carrot. First word. The ape pinched 2 wrinkled fingers together. Small word? A. The. For ook. The. Second word. Third word? Small word. The. A. To. Of. Of. The something of something. Second word. What? Oh. First syllable? Fingers. Touching your fingers. Thumbs. The orangutan growled and tugged theatrically at one large hairy ear. Oh, sounds like. Fingers, hand, adding up, sums, cut off, smaller word. Some. Second syllable, small, very small syllable, a, in, on. On! Some on. Some on? Summon! Summoner? Summoning? Summoning. Summoning. The summoning of something. This is fun, isn't it? Fourth word, whole word. He peered intently as the librarian gyrated mysteriously. Big thing. Huge big thing. Flapping. Great big flapping leaping thing. Teeth. Huffing. Blowing. Great big huge blowing flapping thing. Sweat broke out on Carrot's forehead as he tried obediently to understand. Sucking fingers. Sucking fingers thing. Burnt. Hot. Great big hot blowing flapping thing. The librarian rolled his eyes. Homo sapiens? You could keep it. That was really difficult to get through without laughing through the whole thing. Doing the charades thing in Carrot's voice. Sharky's like the implication that a crime in the library has more mysterious potential than a crime somewhere else. I think that's accurate, yeah. Not everywhere else. Like, I would say not more potential than a crime on a train, but definitely more potential than a crime in an alley. Libraries are mysterious, says Farmos. Gotta start with category. Apparently, orangutan means man of the forest or something like that. I saw that post on Facebook. Every time I play charades from now on, I should do it in Carrot's voice. Oh boy. The great dragon danced and spun and trod the air over the city. Its color was moonlight, gleaming off its scales. Sometimes it would twist and glide with deceptive speed over the rooftops for the sheer joy of existing. And it was all wrong, Vimes thought. Part of him was marveling at the sheer beauty of the sight, but an insistent, weaselly little group of brain cells from the wrong side of the synapses were scrawling its graffiti on the walls of wonderment. It's a bloody great lizard, they jeered. Must weigh tons. Nothing that big can fly, not even on beautiful wings. And what is a flying lizard doing with great big scales on its back? 500 feet above him, a lance of blue-white flame roared into the sky. It can't do something like that. It'd burn its own lips off. Beside him, Lady Ramkin stood with her mouth open. Behind her, the little caged dragons yammered and howled. The great beast turned in the air and swooped over the rooftops. The flame darted out again. Below it, yellow flames sprung up. It was done so quietly and stylishly that it took Vimes several seconds to realize that several buildings had in fact been set on fire. "Golly," said Lady Ramkin. "Look! It's using the thermals! That's what the fire is for!" She turned to Vimes, her eyes hopelessly aglow. "Do you realize we're very probably seeing something that no one has seen for centuries?" "Yes, it's a bloody flying alligator setting fire to my city!" shouted Vimes. She wasn't listening to him. "There must be a breeding colony somewhere," she said. "After all this time, where do you think it lives?" Vimes didn't know, but he swore to himself that he would find out, and ask it some very serious questions. "One egg," breathed the breeder. "Just let me get my hands on one egg." Vimes stared at her in genuine astonishment. It dawned on him that he was very probably a flawed character. Below them, another building exploded into flame. "How far exactly," he said, speaking very slowly and carefully, as to a child, "did these things fly?" "They're very territorial animals," murmured her ladyship. "According to legend, they—" Vimes realized he was in for another dose of dragon lore. "Just give me the facts, m'lady," he said impatiently. "Not very far, really," she said, slightly taken aback. "Thank you very much, ma'am. You've been very helpful," muttered Vimes, and broke into a run. Somewhere in the city, there was nothing outside for miles except... let me re-emphasize that. Somewhere in the city. There was nothing outside for miles except low fields and swamp. It had to be living somewhere in the city. His sandals flapped on the cobbles as he hurtled down the streets. Somewhere in the city! Which was totally ridiculous, of course. Totally ridiculous and impossible. He didn't deserve this. Of all the cities in all the world it could have flown into, he thought, it's flown into mine. By the time he reached the river, the dragon had vanished, but a pall of smoke was hanging over the streets, and several human bucket chains had been formed to pass lumps of the river to the stricken buildings. Footnote 1. The Guild of Firefighters had been outlawed by the patrician the previous year, after many complaints. The point was that, if you bought a contract from the guild, your house would be protected against fire. Unfortunately, the general Ankh-Morpork ethos quickly came to the fore, and firefighters would tend to go to prospective clients' houses in groups, making loud comments like, "Very inflammable-looking place, this," and "Probably go up like a firework with just one carelessly dropped match, know what I mean?" End of footnote. The job was considerably hampered by the droves of people streaming out of the streets, carrying their possessions. Most of the city was wood and thatch, and they weren't taking any chances. In fact, the danger was surprisingly small. Mysteriously small when you came to think about it. Vimes had surreptitiously taken to carrying a notebook these days, and he had noted the damage as if the mere act of writing it down somehow made the world a more understandable place. Oh boy. This is in Vimes's writing, and it's spelled pretty unusually, so I'll probably just handle that by pronouncing the words the way they look. Item. A coach house belonging to an inoffensive businessman who'd seen his new carriage go up in flames. Item. A small vegetable shop with pinpoint accuracy. Sound familiar? Vimes wondered about that. He'd bought some apples in there once, and there didn't appear to be anything about it that a dragon could possibly take offense at. Still, very considerate of the dragon, he thought as he made his way to the watch-house. When you think of all the timber yards, hay ricks, thatched roofs, and oil stores it could have hit by chance, it's managed to really frighten everyone without actually harming the city. Rays of early morning sunlight were piercing the drifts of smoke as he pushed open the door. This was home. Not the bare little room over the candlemaker's shop in Wixon's Alley where he slept, but this nasty brown room that smelt of unswept chimneys, Sergeant Colin's pipe, Nobby's mysterious personal problem, and, latterly, Carrot's armor polish. Laterly, maybe? Maybe that's supposed to be laterly? It's Latterly, which I would read as latterly, but it seems like it should be lately. So, oh, I'm missing some stuff here. Well, it was almost like home. Pharma says she does love a good train mystery. Oh, like bees, don't bumblebees fly or hover in an inexplicable way? Sharky say it's adorable to think of dragons as giant lizard bumblebees. Pharma says, I've just learned that apparently that's a misconception. Bees fly similarly to hummingbirds, the, like, circular motion thing. See, I thought the thing with bees was that their body, seems like it's too heavy for their wings to be able to support or something like that. Which is not, I imagine, the way dragons are supposed to fly. Sharky's just caught that was a slight Casablanca reference. Oh, it had to, of all the cities that had to fly into mine, yeah. No, I want to see this as a spoof film noir. Well, I mean, a lot of Vime's stuff, when he gets to detectiving, is very film noir, you know, private eye sort of style, I think. A lot of it reads that way to me. Pharma says, although it would be adorable. There are a few of those in this book, I think. Sharky say, I'd read as a short, though I can't exactly say why. Oh, read as a short A? I don't remember which word I was having trouble with for that one. That is the myth, but it's wrong? Okay. Just the facts, milady. Oh. Latterly. Pharma says, I think there might also be a Twin Peaks reference, though that might not be in this book. I don't think I've ever actually seen Twin Peaks. Alright. No one else was there. He wasn't entirely surprised. He clumped up to his office and leaned back in his chair, whose cushion would have been thrown out of its basket in disgust by an incontinent dog, pulled his helmet over his eyes, and tried to think. No good rushing about. The dragon had vanished in all the smoke and confusion, as suddenly as it had come. Time for rushing about soon enough. The important thing was working out where to rush to. He'd been right. Waiting bird. But where did you start looking for a bloody great dragon in a city of 1 million people? He was aware that his right hand, entirely unbidden, had pulled open the bottom drawer, and 3 of his fingers, acting on sealed orders from his hindbrain, had lifted out a bottle. It was one of those bottles that emptied themselves. Reason told him that sometimes he must occasionally start one, break the seal, see amber liquid glistening all the way up to the neck. It was just that he couldn't remember the sensation. It was as if the bottles arrived 2/3 empty. He stared at the label. It seemed to be Jimkin Bear Hugger's Old Selected Dragon's Blood Whiskey. Cheap and powerful. You could light fires with it, you could clean spoons. You didn't have to drink much of it to be drunk, which was just as well. It was Nobby who shook him awake with the news that there was a dragon in the city, and also that Sergeant Colin had had a nasty turn. Vimes sat and blinked owlishly while the words washed around him. Apparently, having a fire-breathing lizard focusing interestedly on one's nether regions from a distance of a few feet can upset the strongest constitution. An experience like that could leave a lasting mark on a person. Vimes was still digesting this when Carrot turned up with the librarian swinging along behind him. "Did you see it? Did you see it?" he said. "We all saw it," said Vimes. "I know all about it," said Carrot triumphantly. "Someone's brought it here with magic. Someone's stolen a book out of the library, and guess what it's called?" "Can't even begin to," said Vimes weakly. "It's called The Summoning of Dragons." "Ook," confirmed the librarian. I read that ook differently in my head than I do out loud. In my head, it's more high-pitched. It's like an ook or something like that. But when I'm reading it out loud, I'm like, no, this is a big orangutan. It's got to be more gravelly than that. Chucky's cheers. He got it eventually. "Oh, what's it about?" said Vimes. The librarian rolled his eyes. "It's about how to summon dragons. By magic." "Ook." "And that's illegal, that is," said Carrot happily. "Releasing feral creatures upon the streets, contrary to the wild animals, public," Vimes groaned. That meant wizards. You got nothing but trouble with wizards. "I suppose," he said, "there wouldn't be another copy of this book around, would there?" "Ook," the librarian shook his head. "And you wouldn't happen to know what's in it?" Vimes sighed. "What? Oh. 4 words," he said wearily. "First word sounds like bend, bow, sow, cow, how. Second word, small word, the, to. Yes, understood, but I meant in any kind of detail." "No, I see." "What are we going to do now, sir?" said Carrot anxiously. "It's out there," intoned Nobby. "On the ground, like during the hours of daylight. Coiled up in its secret lair on top of a great hoard of gold, dreaming ancient reptilian dreams from a dawn of time, waiting for the secret curtains of the night when once more it will sally forth." He hesitated and added sullenly, "What are y'all looking at me like that for?" "Very poetic," said Carrot. "Well, everyone knows the real old dragons used to go to sleep on a hoard of gold," said Nobby. "Well-known folk myth." Vimes looked blankly into the immediate future. Vile though Nobby was, he was also a good indication of what was going through the mind of the average citizen. You could use him as a sort of laboratory rat to forecast what was going to happen next. "I expect you'd be really interested in finding out where that hoard is, wouldn't you? Said Vimes experimentally. Nobby looked even more shifty than usual. Well, Cap'n, I was thinking of having a bit of a look around. You know, when I'm off duty, of course, he added virtuously. Oh, dear, said Captain Vimes. He lifted up the empty bottle and with great care put it back in the drawer. 8 o'clock on, no, 8:05. I think we can read a little bit further. Let's see. Farmo says, yes, it's lighting house fires and burning people, but the releasing of it is what's illegal. Well, I don't know if you can accuse a dragon of a crime, but you can accuse people summoning a dragon of a crime. Sharky say, well, for lighting houses and burning people, Carrot would arrest the dragon. Farmo says, unless the dragon is considered a weapon, then he's evidence, say the Sharkies. The elucidated brethren were nervous. A kind of fear crackled from brother to brother. It was the fear of someone who, having cheerfully experimented with pouring the powder and wadding the ball, has found that pulling the trigger had led to a god-awful bang, and pretty soon someone is bound to come and see who's making all the noise. The Supreme Grand Master knew that he had them, though. Sheep and lamb, sheep and lamb. Since they couldn't do anything much worse than they had already done, they might as well press on and damn the world, and pretend they'd wanted it like this all along. Oh, the joy of it. Only Brother Plasterer was actually happy. Let that be a lesson to all oppressive vegetable sellers, he kept saying. Yes, said Brother Doorkeeper. Only the thing is, there's no chance of us sort of accidentally summoning the dragon here, is there? That is, we, have it under perfect control, said the Supreme Grand Master smoothly. The power is ours, I can assure you. The brothers cheered up a little bit. And now, the Supreme Grand Master continued, there is the matter of the king. The brothers looked solemn, except for Brother Plasterer. Have we found him, then? He said. That's a stroke of luck. You never listen, do you? Snapped Brother Watchtower. It was all explained last week. We don't go around finding anyone. We make a king. I thought he was supposed to turn up, 'cause of destiny. Brother Watchtower sniggered. We sort of help destiny along a bit. The Supreme Grand Master smiled in the depths of his robe. It was amazing, this mystic business. You tell them a lie, and then when you don't need it anymore, you tell them another lie, and tell them they're progressing along the road to wisdom. Then, instead of laughing, they follow you even more, hoping that at the heart of all the lies they'll find the truth. And bit by bit, they accept the unacceptable. Amazing. Bloody hell, that's clever, said Brother Doorkeeper. How do we do that, then? Look, the Supreme Grand Master said what we do, we find some handsome lad who's good at taking orders, he kills the dragon, and Bob's your uncle. Simple. Much more intelligent than waiting for a so-called real king. But Brother Plasterer seemed deep in the toils of cerebration. If we control the dragon, and we do control the dragon right, then we don't need anyone killing it. We just stop summoning it, and everyone will be happy, right? Oh, yes, said Brother Watchtower nastily. I can just see it, can you? We just trot out, say, 'Hello, we won't set fire to your houses anymore, aren't we nice, do we?' The whole point about the thing with the king is that he'll be a sort of undeniably potent and romantic symbol of absolute authority," said the Supreme Grandmaster smoothly. "That's it," said Brother Watchtower. "A potent authority." "Oh, I see," said Brother Plasterer. "Right, okay. That's what the king'll be." "That's it," said Brother Watchtower. "No one going to argue with a potent authority, are they?" "Too right," said Brother Watchtower. "Stroke of luck, then, finding the true king right now," said Brother Plasterer. "1,000,000 to 1 chance, really." "We haven't found the right king. We don't need the right king," said the Supreme Grandmaster wearily. "For the last time. I've just found us a likely lad who looks good in a crown, and can take orders, and knows how to flourish a sword. Now just listen." Sharky say, "I feel like somewhere nearby has been through this in the past year." Flourishing, of course, was important. It didn't have much to do with wielding. Wielding a sword, the Supreme Grandmaster considered, was simply the messy business of dynastic surgery. It was just a matter of cut and thrust. Whereas a king had to flourish one. It had to catch the light in just the right way, leaving watchers in no doubt that here was destiny's chosen. He'd taken a long time preparing the sword and shield. It had been very expensive. The shield shone like $1 in a sweep's ear hole, but the sword was magnificent. It was long and shiny. It looked like something some genius of metalwork, one of those little Zen guys who works only by the light of dawn, and can beat a club sandwich of folded steels into something with the cutting edge of a scalpel and the stopping power of a sex-crazed rhinoceros on bad acid. Wow. Had made, and then retired in tears because he'd never, ever do anything so good again. There were so many jewels on the hilt, it had to be sheathed in velvet. You had to look at it through smoked glass. Just laying a hand on it practically conferred kingship. As for the lad, he was a distant cousin, keen and vain, and stupid in a passably aristocratic way. Currently, he was under guard in a distant farmhouse with an adequate supply of drink and several young ladies, although what the boy seemed most interested in was mirrors. Probably hero material, the Supreme Grandmaster thought glumly. "I suppose," said Brother Watchtower, "that he isn't the real heir to the throne?" Spelled A-I-R. "What do you mean?" said the Supreme Grandmaster. "Well, you know how it is. Fate plays funny tricks, ha-ha. It'd be a laugh, wouldn't it," said Brother Watchtower, "if this lad turned out to be the real king, after all this trouble." "There is no real king any more," snapped the Supreme Grandmaster. "What do you expect? Some people wandering in the wilderness for hundreds and hundreds of years, patiently handing down a sword and a birthmark? Some sort of magic?" He spat the word. He'd make use of magic, means to an end justifies means, and so forth. But to go around believing it had some sort of moral force, like logic, made him wince. "Good grief, man, be logical! Be rational. Even if any of the old royal family survived, the bloodline would be so watered down by now that there must be thousands of people who lay claim to the throne. Even, he tried to think of the least likely claimant, even someone like Brother Dunnikin. He stared at the assembled brethren. Don't see him here tonight, by the way. Funny thing, that, said Brother Watchtower thoughtfully. Didn't you hear? What? He got bitten by a crocodile on his way home last night. Poor little bugger. What? 1,000,000 to 1 chance. It had escaped from the menagerie or something and was lying low in his backyard. He went to feel under his doormat for his door key, and it had him by the funes. Footnote 1. A species of geranium. End of footnote. Brother Watchtower fumbled under his robe and produced a grubby brown envelope. We're having a whip round to buy him some grapes and that. I don't know whether you'd like to, Put me down for $3, said the Supreme Grandmaster. Brother Watchtower nodded. Funny thing, he said. I already have. Just a few more nights, thought the Supreme Grandmaster. By tomorrow, the people will be so desperate they'd crown even a one-legged troll if he got rid of the dragon. And we'll have a king, and he'll have an adviser, a trusted man, of course. And this stupid rabble can go back to the gutter. No more dressing up, no more ritual, no more summoning the dragon. I can give it up, he thought. I can give it up any time I like. All right, I'm going to stop there. Brother Dunnikin got bit by an alligator. If only he'd had some kind of charm to prevent that. Pharma says, cost me a whole $3. Won't see those $3 back and no mistake. Might have had the blood of kings. Poor Brother Dunnikin, bitten right on the geranium. Gotcha. Oh boy. So what was everyone's favorite part of this one? I liked the charades bit. I thought that was pretty fun. I don't know whether my Lady Ramkin ended up being good enough. That's all I'm aiming for with Lady Ramkin, is good enough. Not completely ridiculous. Somewhat ridiculous, but not completely. Everyone seems to think charades was the best part. Parmo says, you think I'm getting there with her? Alright. Like I said, good enough. Yeah, carrot voice. You'd think the carrot voice would be easier to get back into, but I need to have, like, sometimes when it's the first one of his lines that I've read in in an episode, if it's something short, I don't quite get it. I need a good long sentence to capture the Dudley Do-Right aspect of it. And I feel like I'm a little worried some of these voices are starting to blend together. Oh boy. It's just also... Oof. Well, I hope that was fun, and I hope everyone's got plans for the weekend that are going to be fun. We're going to go spend some time with some friends, maybe play a board game, maybe play some video games. I'm going to bring along my D&D book to do more reading and planning. Sharkies, I'd love to cosplay as Lady Ramkin sometime, but I feel it'd be tricky to make her recognizable rather than just a plus-size mother of dragons. Yeah, I mean, the only people that would recognize it would be people who have read the books. And I mean, you'd have to have a dragon on your shoulder. And beyond that, I mean, I don't know, maybe the like leather armor or something like that. Maybe a teacup with a saucer. Ramos says she is kind of like the Discworld Daenerys, but better. Say the Sharkies. Yeah, Daenerys, but I wonder, I'm pretty sure the Discworld came first, although it's possible it didn't. Because this is her first appearance, and this was, what, 1989? Hey Google, when was the first Game of Thrones book published?
The date of first publication of A Game of Thrones was August 1st, 1996.
1990s. Wait, hang on. Hey Google, when was the first A Song of Ice and Fire book published?
The date of first publication of A Game of Thrones was August 1st, 1996.
Okay, that's later than I thought. I thought that, in case you couldn't hear that, apparently it was 1996, August 1st, 1996. I thought it was earlier for some reason. Nope, August 1st, 1996. All right. Then, yep, this came first. I love how she's so like, you know, the immediate thought is like, oh, if I could only get my hand on one of the eggs of that thing that's setting fire to the city right now. The original Mother of Dragons, yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm all out of focus again. Back here. Camera, I'm over here. Hello. Start close. Work it back. Hi. No, it doesn't want to do it. Whatever. No big deal. Oh, there we go. Lady Ramkin is a great character, though. Her, like, flirting with Vimes. Captain, such a dashing, dangerous title. Alright, well, made it through that. The plot is thickening. I think we actually read a little more than I thought. We're up to page 144 now. Out of 400 and whatever I said, 420 or something. 412. So we're getting through it. Although, I feel like a lot of this action is happening a lot earlier in the book than I had remembered it happening. Like, we're still not even halfway through the book, and I feel like a lot of, I don't know, the big events of the book have been taking place. I definitely am not remembering the pacing of this book correctly. Well, hope everyone has a good weekend. I'm going to be pretty, not busy, but occupied, I suppose, through most of it. And then be back. Got an appointment at the vet for Binnabik on Monday. We'll be back here on Wednesday to continue to figure out what's going to happen. How are we going to slay this dragon? Still haven't gotten to your favorite scene. Ramos is curious to see what that is. I'm curious too. Yeah. I wonder. Alright. Well, have a good weekend. I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.